Hi, everybody. Well, I guess we are live. It's 3:29. This thing starts at 3:30. I'm just going to start talking now because, quite honestly, I can't see when y'all log in. The platform that I use does not allow me to see that kind of activity. The only way that I know you're here is if you send in a chat from whatever platform you are watching this from. Um, yeah, I will not know you are on unless you send a chat saying hello. Give us your name, give us what town you're in. It would be great to know that I am not just speaking into the void. Nothing is more unnerving than that. It actually came up in a meeting earlier today that I was in, and that is how anxious it makes us feel when we're in a virtual meeting or some sort of setting. Maybe it's like this one where you're just talking to yourself almost. No one's responding. So, and I understand that that's the platform I chose, and that it does often feel like I'm speaking into the void. But I'm hoping that this reaches at least one person today. And today we are going to be talking a bit about finding our balance in life. Hi, Kim. Hi, Lisa. Y'all are awesome. It's good to see you guys. We're going to talk about balance. We're going to talk about it though in the thought of how to find our balance, how to find our calm when life is maybe a bit chaotic. Because, well, let's be honest, life has us maybe been feeling a bit like a shit show right now. I don't know if any of y'all are feeling like you're caught in the middle of a storm, but I know I do. And I don't think that's changing anytime soon. So, how do we stay steady when life is anything but calm? And yeah, so if you would drop a word in the chat that describes how you've been feeling lately, maybe I won't feel so alone. And also be sure or welcome to ask any questions. I will try to keep an eye on the chat. We only have a half an hour, but if you have any questions or comments, I'm happy to also share them with everyone else. I've hidden the comments this time, unlike last month, to hopefully help you all feel just a little bit more comfortable in sharing. And if you don't want me to share something that you type, just say do not share or DNS. All right, so let's get started. So honestly, there have been a lot of times in my life where I've felt the overwhelm kick in when I've had way too many plates spinning at once. And anytime I've done that, my body usually tells me it's had enough. And it's a really annoying sign for me. My right eye actually starts twitching. And all I can feel or think is, okay, I know I feel it. Does anyone see that this is happening right now? This is seriously irritating. And it just pulls my attention away from what I'm actually doing. But it's also a really lovely reminder, a physical reminder to take a step back and reassess what I'm doing. I remember there was one point in my career, well, it's really a day in the life, but I was at this point pretty new to being a director over a property management department. And gone were the days where I was honestly just responsible for my property or my small team and the success we were having. Now I had multiple teams in multiple cities, and I was traveling all over God's green earth. I was so busy. I was creating processes for the organization. I was handling new business. I was trying to tie down sustainable operations. I was managing all the changing needs of my team, which if you've ever handled HR, you know what I'm talking about. It's a lot of fun. I was mentoring, I was helping answer a myriad of different questions. Things like, oh, an awning just fell off of the building on top of a car while someone was sitting in it. What do I do? I was opening a new office in a new city, and I was volunteering for an organization in Austin. I was just in too many different places at once. And I was also trying to handle things at home and take care of myself. I was twitching. The right eye was so twitching at that moment. And all of it was coming to a head. Or rather, it was more of like a tsunami sized wave that felt like it was capsizing over my head. This was honestly a turning point. My body was telling me it had had all it could take. It just couldn't handle anymore. And to be honest, I wasn't taking care of my body the way that it deserved. And the day I couldn't catch my breath, literally couldn't catch my breath, was the day I remembered that small intentional changes not only needed to happen, but were at that point within my reach. I knew this to be true. And honestly, that whole experience taught me that balance isn't really about getting it right all the time. And that includes getting balance right itself. It's more about knowing what to hold on to and what to let go of. It's about cutting yourself some slack sometimes when you need it and redirecting your intentional attention. And today I want to share some ideas or some ways that you can hopefully do the same. So go ahead in the chat and maybe just list out one thing that instantly makes you feel grounded when stress takes over. And while you do that, let's get just a teensy bit sciencey. I think we've identified it, and certainly I have said I am not a scientist, but I do a decent amount of reading when I'm trying to write for my newsletter. And when in one of my posts that I did for the newsletter, I found an article by Harvard Medical School, and it really explained the stress response to me in a way that made sense. That wasn't so sciencey that I felt like I was reading the same sentence 2 or 3 times. And basically, to sum it up, it all comes down or begins with the brain and the parts of the brain that assess what it considers to be a danger. And that's kind of what stress is coming from, right? When it perceives danger, it's basically sending a distress signal to a part of the brain that communicates with the rest of our body through the nervous system. And that nervous system has a couple of different, well, two main components, which I think we probably all remember. Even I remember this, the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems, right? So the sympathetic is the one that is like gas pedal in the car, right? It's ready to go. It triggers the flight or fight response, or fight or flight, however you want to say it. And it gives our body that burst of energy it needs. So, okay, all of that's a good thing. We need that. The problem happens when we stay in that stress response, right? When our brain is still thinking it has to protect us. It still thinks there's a threat at hand, even though we're not being chased by a saber-toothed tiger. It thinks we are, and so it keeps us in that stress response. That's the problem. That sends us into overwhelm. And this is not your fault. It is the brain trying to protect you. This is kind of it's actually what leads to that anxiety ball that gets into your stomach, the decision fatigue. Have you ever caught yourself staring at a piece of paper or your phone or your laptop and you realize you haven't read a damn thing? You're just staring at it and you can't make a decision, you can't read anything, you can't process it, right? The stress response is what leads to that. It can also lead to burnout. And if we let it go on for too long, it leads into what's called chronic stress. which can have massive impacts on our health and our sleep, our relationships, basically everything. So, what the hell do we do about it? Well, there is a power to resetting, or let's call it hitting the reset button, the big red button. And all it takes are some small shifts that can create a really big change. And I like to think of it as like a top three. So if you look at it this way, and we'll break these down just a little bit, but it's number one is acknowledgement, number two is boundaries, and number three is intention. It's that simple. Acknowledgement, boundaries, and intention. Because balance is not about time management, y'all. It's about energy management. And I mean, time management it has its place, and there are some tips and tricks that can help us get through a really busy day. I'm not saying that's not true, but none of us are getting extra time out of our day. So the time is not infinite, right? So what we want to talk about is how we have control of our energy management. So where are you right now? Before we move on, where are you emotionally? What is your chest or your gut or maybe even your right eye telling you? Go ahead and type that in the chat. Hi, Tiana. Hi, Carlos. Okay, let's break down our top threes. First is acknowledgement. Do exactly what you're doing right now, which is acknowledge where you are emotionally. Okay, I fill in the blank. That's simple. And you don't have to use big words. It's just whatever comes to your brain first. The second part of acknowledgement is, okay, I feel that way. What's the root cause of that? Acknowledge what the root cause of whatever your emotional response is. For me, most recently, the root cause of my anxiety ball was doom scrolling the news and everyone's social media comments about the state of everything that's happening around us in our world and our country. Yeah. Hello, anxiety ball. So, what is the root cause of that emotional feeling you were just acknowledging? What is that root cause? All right, number two in our top three is boundaries, because boundaries are balance. We've got to learn how to say no, and I'm one of the worst at this. So I'm a work in progress. So back to that day in the life of that property management role, I had to admit to myself that I was allowing myself to get sucked in to everything. Just most recently, I had to acknowledge that I was allowing myself to get sucked in to the doomsday narrative being spun by everybody around me. In fact, I had to acknowledge and just admit that I was allowing myself to really allow perfect strangers into my home through social media. I might have found a real positive GIF or reel or just a meme in general, and then I would start scrolling through the comments and it would get really negative and really angry really fast. And that is horribly unfortunate, but it was my decision to allow those comments to infiltrate my psyche, and my nervous system was paying the price. I had to stop ingesting the news. I had to stop ingesting the comments, and I had to stop ingesting news at the wrong times of the day. I had to decide to just not read comments, take whatever it was that I was seeing on social media as a positive and go on with my day. And then I had to acknowledge that, well, the news was making me anxious, so maybe I shouldn't watch it the very last thing before I laid my head down on the pillow. I had to set some boundaries. And on the day where everything kind of came to a head in my job, well, I had to learn to walk away from some of the stuff I had said yes to and some of the work that didn't belong to me. Have you ever heard the analogy like those bags aren't yours to carry when you're talking about someone who you're hoping to fix? Well, it's the same thing with our jobs or, whatever it is that we're incessantly trying to fix that maybe it's not our job to do, right? I had to acknowledge that. I had to acknowledge the fact that I was trying to make everyone happy And that just isn't possible. And so in the end, I ended up having to let the people on my team fail. I mean, yes, there was a little bit of a safety net, but I had to let go of the need to be there to catch every single thing before it fell through the cracks. I had to let some stuff fail. And guess what? The world did not stop turning. And as a process or a part of that process, I stopped letting myself be available every second of every day to everyone else except for me, right? So I had to set some boundaries. So now that you've taken a chance to just acknowledge what your gut's telling you, where you're at emotionally, and you've taken a moment to identify what the root cause of that is, what is one small boundary that you can set with that root cause that you just acknowledged that will help give you a little bit more peace? Now, as you go through that, and I understand if maybe it doesn't come to you immediately, but I would say by and large, anytime you ask yourself that question, really listen to the first thing that pops into your head, because more often than not, that is truth. That's coming from someplace in your intuition that is guiding you in the right direction. And now it's time to get intentional, to take all of that work from our top two into the third part of the top three, and that's intentionality. You got to get rooted, drop the anchor, whatever analogy you want to use. It's time to get intentional. Because once you've identified your boundaries, you can start to practice them. But that does take intention. So, first things first, how do we do that? Okay, what I want you to do is I want you to think about what your non-negotiables are. What brings you back to your center? What are 3 things that you know always work for you? For me, it's gratitude. I'm saying and listing 3 things that I'm grateful for. That helps me remember what is most important in my life. Number 2 for me is nature. Getting outside is always going to cure that thing in my soul. It's a surefire way to help me root back into the earth and step out of the tornado that I've allowed to swirl around me. And number 3 for me is always either movement or meditation, or both. Most of the time, if I can move my body, whether it's walking or dancing or going to the gym or pickleball, for goodness sakes, any way to get that blood circulating helps me get back into my body and out of my head when I'm feeling dysregulated. And when I'm more of a maintenance mode and I'm working to just stay centered, even a short meditation or just a pause to breathe does me a world of good. Kim says the gym. Yeah, I hear you. So once you know the 3 things that always work for you, because I will say that some work better than others for me at certain times. Sometimes it takes all 3, depending on how dysregulated I am. A nap and good food. Yes, I love it. One way to keep these front and center for yourself and to also help them be as effective as possible is to turn them into rituals. Okay, so why did I say rituals and not routine? Okay, here's why. I'm glad you asked. So routines are practical tasks that we do regularly. Think like brushing your teeth, checking emails, making coffee in the morning. They do help us function efficiently, but they don't necessarily bring meaning or comfort, right? And what we're trying to do with our intentional setting, our top 3 intentional acts, is to create that comfort, that meaning. So if we treat them as rituals, which rituals add intention and emotional significance to our actions. They can be grounding, they can be calming, sometimes even healing. A ritual could be as simple as putting your hand on your chest and taking 3 deep breaths before you grab the coffee pot in the morning. It can be saying 3 things you're grateful for before your feet hit the floor in the morning or before you go to sleep. Maybe it's setting a certain time of day each day to go for a walk in the neighborhood or whatever park is closest to you. I like the evenings. It could also just be as simple as lighting a candle every day before you make dinner. Whatever it is for you, what you're creating is a ritual for a time to pause and reflect. So I'm seeing all of these wonderful things. Keep these daily rituals coming in. I love hearing them. I'm going to share a couple here real quick. We heard about the gym, napping, good food, space and silence, even just a few moments to help pull her out of a spiral, photography and meditation. I love all of it. Keep it coming. I want you to get these acts that you can do, these things that work for you, and write them down, even if you don't put them in the chat today. Because you're going to have some challenges along the way as you start to change or shift the way that you're thinking, that shift the way that you're reacting or being proactive in your maintenance of balance, right? Perfect example, a while back, I decided I am not going to pick up my phone anymore before I have had a cup of coffee and had at least a short meditation every morning. And as soon as I decided to do that, I swear my brain every morning was like, pick up your phone. And it was really hard to get out of the habit of doing that. So you may hit I just naturally pick up whatever it is that I used to do because those habits are really hard to break. You might think to yourself, I don't have time. Okay, that's a challenge we often face. Well, balance isn't about having more time, it's about being intentional with your time. What are you intentionally giving your attention to? Right? So it's not thinking you're just going to create more time, it's being aware of the fact that time is not infinite and that you can intentionally place your focus wherever you want, right? That's your choice. You might have the challenge of feeling guilty about stepping away, right, for yourself. I'm here to remind you rest is not a reward, it is actually a necessity. It's the only way we can continue to give. You can't give from an empty cup, right? So you've got to refill that cup. And another challenge you might think, which has certainly happened to me before, which is I'll focus on it later. I'll think about that later. Well, later never comes. I'll tell you that right now. So just start small, and then it won't feel like you have to give up so much to create that small change for yourself. Because you do deserve peace. Personally, I find it really helpful to write down the negative ideas that pop in my head, the challenges that my brain gives me, the ego gives me, things like I don't have time. When I write down that thought, it gets it out of my head and I can see it and I can see how ridiculous it is. And then I'll write the exact opposite of that. I'll write, well, time is not infinite and I can choose to place my attention in any direction I want, right? So that's helpful for me. It's also helpful to remember that balance is, well, one, it's never going to be perfect, but it's not about perfection. It's about progress. I mean, no one ever has their shit all together all the time. So give yourself a break, okay? In fact, why don't you reach out, make a phone call, a text, whatever, a Slack, whatever your preferred way of communicating is, and connect with a friend, someone that you trust, whether it's someone you talk to every day or someone you haven't talked to in a long time, and really just get real for a minute. Tell them how you're feeling, what's really going on with you, and give them a chance to do the same. I think it will not only remind you that you're not alone, it might actually help the person on the other end of that phone too. I mean, because let's be honest, chaos is always going to exist, but calm is a choice that we can make every day. All right, so if you're with me, go ahead and type I choose calm in the chat. And just remember, the storm's always going to be there, but the way we move through it, that's what counts. And it's up to you, right? This is about, well, it's not about escaping chaos. It's about learning to just be steady in the middle of it. And I know I'm not alone. I know I have a lot of friends here that are stronger than they think. So I just want to remind you that you are just that. You're stronger than you think. So I hope that this talk resonated with you. I'm going to leave the chat open for just a little bit longer. I'm going to share some of the stuff that came up in here because this is just fun. I love seeing it. And while I do that, I'm going to share a QR code. And forgive me, my computer is lagging just a little bit. I love seeing, we've got playing with my dogs, spending quality time with those that I love and appreciate and like, and I choose calm. I do too. I love you guys. Have a great day, and I will see you in about a month. I choose calm.